Hi all! Previously, we have discussed different types of paragliding competitions. Today, I would like to focus on one of them, hike and fly. Hike and fly is slightly different than the others because a big part of it still happens on the ground. The athletes don't need to be only good pilots, but as well move fast and run fast in often difficult mountain terrain. They as well need to be able to land and take off in often tricky spots, which is different than in most other paragliding competitions where we usually use adapted official landing and takeoffs. Because there's no authority or set of international rules imposed on hike and fly competitions, similar as we have for cross-country competitions or for acro, the competitions are actually very various, and organizers have all the power to customize and adapt any general rules or come up with their own formulas. This is actually super fun for competitors, but can be as well confusing for spectators or those that just enter the sport. That's why I would like to give you an idea about what are the options, what are the already known formulas, and how known hike and fly competitions work. If you know only one paragliding competition, it's probably Red Bull X Alps. It's because it got the most visibility outside of the paragliding world. For sure, thanks to spectacular footage, but as well just because it's considered one of the hardest endurance races in the world. So, how does X Alps work? Before every edition, a route is selected. A route is basically a list of points that the athlete needs to visit. The points can be cities or landmarks or summits or just any known places, usually related to sponsors those days. Most of the points need to be visited by athletes, and manually they need to sign a board just to prove they have been there. Although that's not the case for all of them, but let's talk about it later. To move between the points, they usually hike to a nearby mountain and cover as much distance as possible by flying. Flying is much faster and uses less energy, that's why it's always prioritized. However, when it's not possible, you may just need to walk the whole day, and this also happens quite often. You can only move during the day, usually between 5 and 10, and flying is even more restricted, just so you don't fly in the darkness. This basic set of rules was inherited by many other competitions and is probably the most popular formula at the moment. But it's not the only one. So, what can go different? First of all, you don't actually need a route, or you actually don't need the order of the points. Some competitions only provide a list of points, and then it's up to you to decide in which order you're going to visit them, and as well if you're going to visit them all. This type of competition is actually much harder because you cannot just blindly follow people in front of you. They may have a very bad idea and soon they're going to end up in a bad place. There'll be usually several very different approaches, and at the beginning it's hard to tell which one actually will be more profitable. That's why you need to choose for yourself, and bad decisions can actually end up much more severe than in other types of competitions. At the same time, it can be a bit confusing and difficult to watch because at a particular point you cannot really say who is winning, because even if someone has more points, it doesn't mean he's going to win, because the other people can be in just better position to collect more points before the end of the game. So you can have a route, but you don't really need one. At the same time, those two concepts are not really exclusive. You can have a very basic route and then some optional points that are visited for additional prize, additional bonus. In that case, the person that finishes first is not always the winner. Depending on the competition, optimizing additional points or just time at the finish line may be more profitable. Besides the route, what else can be done differently than XAlps? One thing that is very important and actually makes XAlps doable is the support. The support is a team of several people that follow the athletes everywhere they go. They provide food, water, accommodation, forecast, they help with navigation, they follow the other teams, and they can even carry equipment. In fact, the athletes are only obliged to carry very essentials, usually harness, wing, helmet, maybe jacket. Everything else can be carried by the other people, or can be left in the car while he's walking on the asphalt. If you imagine there is no support, every athlete would need to think about absolutely everything he's going to need for the whole race, during all the days. He needs to choose one particular model of shoes for both the mountains and the asphalt. If there's one day of rain, he's going to need a rain jacket. If all the other days are hot, he needs to take suitable clothes. He needs to carry all the food he's going to need. He needs to figure out where to get water. He needs to figure out where he's going to sleep, what is the forecast, plan all the logistics himself without absolutely any other help. And still, competitions like this exist, and they're quite common. Because if you think about it, finding several people that are going to go after you for several days and paying for the cars, fuel, equipment for all the people is quite expensive and quite difficult. So not everyone can do that, and not everyone wants to do that. However, there are different ways of dealing with the lack of support. First of all, competitions don't need to last many days. Or even if they do, they can provide many tasks, each of them lasting only one day, and in between you just stay in a hotel and you carry stuff only for one day. The other approach is the one used by Verkofly and Eigertour, where you sleep in the mountain huts that provide accommodation, food, and water. Still, you need to carry all your equipment for all the days, you need to figure out navigation, logistics, and forecast, and as well, you need to book a hut and get to it at the right time. And yet, there are still competitions that require you to take care of absolutely everything, including carrying camping stuff. It's probably the hardest possible formula and definitely the toughest race, just because of the weight you need to carry with you all the time and all the additional logistic issues that come with it. There's one competition that is very different than the previous ones. There is no points and there is no route, no particular route that you need to do. The only thing you're expected to do is to go as far as possible from the start and come back to it after a particular period of time. The most famous one, Border Race, gives you exactly 36 hours to get as far as possible and come back. What you do during these 36 hours is up to you, if you sleep or not, but you can only move, again, by foot or flying. If you don't come back to the start, usually there will be a great penalty or you may be not even classified at all. So it's usually better to take a bit less risk but still come back. As there's a lot of flexibility, it's actually a quite difficult formula because you need to take a very important decision when to start coming back. You may see some people still went farther, but you never know if they're going to be able to come back to the start before the deadline. You need to manage the risk wisely and deeply understand the terrain and your capabilities. It is quite different than competitions with predefined route, where you push no matter what along the race line. In X-Alps, most of the points are validated by signing a board. However, for example, in the previous edition, Mont Blanc was validated just by passing around it counterclockwise. There are many other ways, but the most important is if you can do it by air or you actually need to land. Because if there are good conditions and you're flying fast, landing, especially at the bottom of the valley, is going to cost you a lot of time. After validating the point, you need to hike somewhere else to take off and regain the altitude. And that might be not even possible because there just might be no suitable takeoff around. It can be even more dangerous because conditions close to the ground are usually a bit more tricky. There are valley winds, there are turbulences, there are lee sides, so in some cases that's actually the most dangerous part of the competition. However, those kind of points are quite popular, especially for big events, where they are great for spectators and sponsors because you get a lot of people that can wait for their favorite competitor, take picture with all the sponsor logos, and generally a lot of publicity. They're also great if organizers want to introduce some additional activities, if they want you to explore a bit the local environment, the culture. They can ask you to take a selfie, they can ask you to eat particular food, they can ask you to buy something and bring to the finish line. They can even ask you to swim in a lake and document that. I think the craziest one I've done so far was a Tyrolean ride as a way to validate a point and get additional bonus during last year's Verkofly. Those kind of activities actually make hike and fly competitions much more fun, and therefore organizers try to come up with new ideas, and every year there is something surprising. In most of hike and fly competitions, there's a big priority on flying, but that's not always the case. There are some competitions where it's all about running up the mountain as fast as possible and then flying down as well as fast as possible. In some of the races, like Dolomitenman, the time differences are so little that pilots would do anything just to cut any potential delay. They design their own takeoff systems, so they don't even need to stop to take off, they just keep running. There are many different ways of organizing hike and fly competitions. Usually organizers try to take a bit from each and come up with their own unique idea, or they just copy over the whole other competition and reinstantiate it in different terrain. There are often different bonuses added for additional actions or for people that were first in particular spot. I've even seen the concept of leading points existing in cross-country competitions reintroduced to hike and fly. In that case, each turn point only offered the maximum amount of points for the first person that validated that turn point. Every next person would get less points. Thanks to that system, even if you arrive as the first one on the finish line, but you were second most of the race, you're not going to win. It's usually the leader that takes more risks during the race, and that's why he's offered more points. At the same time, such a system is very complicated, and in the end, simpler solutions usually work better. There's surely other formulas and rules out there, probably some that I have never heard of, but I hope that gives you a good idea about what are the options, and as well that not all hike and fly competitions are exactly the same as the Red Bull X Alps. I really recommend you to look around for some local competitions, even if you're not into hike and fly, even if you're not into competing. It's usually a great fun, and as well, there's a lot to learn from. I really hope you enjoy this content, and if you have any questions or there's something else you would like to know about hike and fly that wasn't mentioned in this or previous videos, just let me know in the comments. Thank you and see you next time.